Welcome to the Bigs, James Wood, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, July 2nd. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, only had 3 games on the schedule, so we have ourselves a bit of a fantasy smorgasbord planned for you today. James Wood did make his debut. We'll talk about June leaders. I have a game, name that player. We're going to put you to the test, Scott, and some mailbag questions. Let's jump in.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy!
All right, Scott, you are up. Player of the night.
I'm going to go with Brenton Doyle, Frank. Brenton Doyle had a huge game for the Rockies back at Coors Field for the start of their full week at Coors Field. Brenton Doyle homered twice. He also doubled. He also stole a base. This was coming off a poor June in which he hit 223, but has maintained the lower strikeout rate, 25.5% compared to 35% last year. And obviously he's multi-talented player with power and speed, still among the stolen base leaders. That stolen base was his 20th. It's kind of a good news, bad news situation for me because I did have Brenton Doyle as one of my sleeper hitters for this week. And in fact, considering only 3 games were played here on Monday, I feel like there are already a lot of wins among the sleeper hitters. But Brenton Doyle's the biggest. This was a 19-point game for him, and that's the bad news for me because in the Scott White Dynasty League, I'm facing Brenton Doyle. Ooh. And a 19-point day for an opposing hitter in a 24-team league is it's not insurmountable, but it's not what you want to see.
Yeah,
but anyway, good for Brenton Doyle. Off to a great start in July now after a bad June.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing about June, specifically his previous 10 games heading into this one. He was batting 125 with a 356 OPS, so was slowing up recently, but a breakout season overall for Brenton Doyle, one that has seen him hit 260 with 9 homers, 48 runs scored, and 20 steals so far this season. He has cut down the strikeout rate tremendously compared to last year, 25.5% K rate versus 35% last year. He entered Monday as the 20th best outfielder in Roto, the 31st in head-to-head points, and that's only going to go up based on this massive
19
game.
of them.
Yeah, this massive game that
he might jump 10 spots in one day in those head-to-head points rankings.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on him? He's not like a sell high. I think he's fine. He, really great speed and, a little bit of power, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you prefer to start him at home rather than on the road, which is generally true for every Rockies hitter. Let me see what the exact splits are here. Since we have the time, we're really going to stretch things out today. Yeah. 318 batting average at home, 199 on the road. And that was prior to this big game.
Yep. Updated 331 with a 925 OPS at home, 199 batting average with a 561 OPS on the road. So yeah, maybe look to mostly start him at home whenever you could. Again, that's Brenton Doyle. Let's talk about my player of the night. Hunter Brown continues to dominate this time. He was at the Blue Jays. He threw 6 shutout innings, 2 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. He did luck out a little bit here because there was no Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the lineup, but you can only face who's in front of you, and that's what Hunter Brown did. He was really good once again. He only allowed 3 hard hits in this game. He really leaned on that sinker, which he's used a lot more over this, past 6 weeks, 2-month stretch for Hunter Brown. It was his most used pitch in this start. Did a great job inducing soft contact with that sinker. And last 8 starts now for Hunter Brown, it's a 1.29 ERA, a .88 WHIP, 53 strikeouts over 49 innings. His ERA on May 5th was 8.89. It is now 4.07. Anything you'd like to add on Hunter Brown, Scott, who is on quite the roll right now?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to make of his pitch usage in the last 2 starts because it seems like he climbed out of that hole he was in with the ERA over 8 by fading the 4-seamer and mixing in a lot more secondary offerings, and that caused the 4-seamer to itself get better. It had a really good whiff rate in June. And now in his last couple starts, he's gone back to throwing that four-seamer about 40% of the time. And with as much as he increased his sinker usage in this one, between the two fastballs there, he threw them a combined 76% of the time. So there really wasn't that pitch mix that when Hunter Brown was at his most dominant. He only got 8 swinging strikes on his 99 pitches in this one. It was facing a bad offense, Toronto. So I don't know. It worked for him. It's hard to complain when it works, but I don't know that this is the approach we want to see from Brown. So I'll just keep an eye on it. See if he continues to throw the fastball, get back to throwing it 40% of the time, the four-seamer specifically, 40% of the time, and if we see the whiffs decrease and him start to run into another bumpy patch because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that would be possible. One thing I noticed when just looking into his overall pitch mix this season, some of his secondary pitches are really good. I mean, I think the approach should be, sinker, changeup, curveball. The changeup and curve on paper, they look like really good pitches. It's great expected WOBA, good whiff rates on those pitches. So I think the formula is there for Hunter Brown. I think maybe he just didn't need them today based on how he was pitching. He just kind of went with what was working and obviously just continues to dominate. That is Hunter Brown. Let's make a quick mention here of James Wood making his major league debut up against the New York Mets, and he went 1 for 4 with a walk. And I noticed the first time he was on base, he was off and running. He was attempting a steal, but the ball was put in play, so we'll never know if he actually would have stole the base or not. He can run, man. I mean, I know he had some steals in the minors and stuff, but he's got those long legs, long strides. So, yeah, I saw a few plays where he had to, run the bases, and, man, the speed actually looked pretty impressive there from James Wood. The other notable 2 hard hits in this debut, his single, 106.7 exit velocity. Any takeaways here?
I mean, nothing major, obviously. It's a sample of 1.
Yeah.
Got the single, got a walk, got a strikeout. The single was hit hard, as we would want it to be, as we would expect it to be from James Wood, who, remember, his average exit velocity at AAA was topped by only 3 major leaguers. Only 3 major leaguers had a higher exit velocity, and 2 of them are Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. So Wood's capable of hitting the ball extremely hard. Just because it kind of exemplifies the one area of concern for Wood, I will point out that he had only 1 batted ball in this game with a positive launch angle, and it was only 5 degrees. That was the single. So, a couple outs that he basically beat straight into the ground, and had a very low fly ball rate, very high ground ball rate at AAA. So hopefully that doesn't undermine his performance here as a rookie. But overall, very excited about the potential. Happy he was in the lineup. Little disappointed Jesse Winker was out of the lineup against the left-hander. Now, Eddie Rosario did get designated for assignment to add James Wood to the roster. So I don't know that it's going to be a consistent issue where Jesse Winker's out of the lineup. It was against a left-hander, obviously. They started Harold Ramirez instead at DH. But it does make me wonder. Winker did come off the bench. He got a walk. He got a double. He scored 2 runs. He looked, you were talking about how James Wood looked running. This was the first time I've really watched a Nationals game that closely this year. And Jesse Winker looked good rounding the bases. 17th percentile sprint speed. But he looked a lot faster than that to me. I don't know. Yeah. He was motoring around there on what was it that happened? Oh, a ball got past the left fielder and he scored from first base on what should have been a single. He was gliding. I could see how he has those stolen bases. I mean, it sounds silly to say when his sprint speed is what it is, but I don't know. He looked pretty fast to me.
Mm-hmm. Again, that was Jesse Winker. James Wood, by the way, kind of getting thrown right into the fire. I didn't realize 3 lefties on the schedule this week. 3 of his first 4 major league games are going to come against left-handed pitching. So his splits, his numbers against lefties were actually really good in the minors. but that will be put to the test right away here with James Wood in his first week of action. Thanks to everybody for watching live. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. YouTube.com/fantasybaseball today. And if you enjoy the audio podcast, you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. We really do appreciate it. Let's take our first break. And when we return, some news and notes right after this.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back in the news and notes. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was scratched from the lineup Monday due to that hit by pitch that he suffered on Sunday. Apparently, his fourth and fifth fingers on his right hand remain swollen. He was not available to pinch hit either. We will see if he is in the lineup here on Tuesday. Corey Seager had an MRI and X-rays come back negative on his left wrist. He was also hit by a pitch on Saturday. He was out of the lineup on Sunday. He's another one. We'll wait and see if he is in the lineup Tuesday. Brandon Nimmo was out of the lineup due to a forehead laceration he suffered when he slipped and fell in his hotel room. Now, we're all human. Anything can happen. But Scott, I feel like baseball players suffer the weirdest injuries that you ever read about.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Who did you say suffered that one?
Brandon Nimmo.
Brandon Nimmo. Ooh. Yeah. I think about, didn't Sammy Sosa go on the IL for coughing? Was he the one? John Smoltz tried ironing his shirt when it was on. He was wearing it. That put him on the IL.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't need to get into that Zach Plesac one. Remember that?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not great either. I think Jabba Chamberlain broke his ankle on a trampoline one time too. Something just crazy injuries, man. Crazy stuff. Kodai Senga will begin a rehab assignment at High A on Wednesday. He's slated to throw about 40 pitches in his first game of the season. And, you know, different injuries, but judging by Garrett Cole, he had 3 rehab starts. You know, maybe Senga 3 or 4, and we could see him at some point right after the All-Star break. Speaking of the Mets, Christian Scott will be recalled to start Wednesday against the Nationals. He is 53% rostered. What kind of priority would you place on Christian Scott? I know we were kind of speculating yesterday that he's going to get called up. Now we have the actual news. Do you still prefer someone like Gavin Williams ahead of Christian Scott?
I mean, that's the discussion we had yesterday, Frank. And Reese Olson. I did move him up in my rankings today, and I've been logged out of the site, so it'll take me a second to pull it up, see exactly where I have him ranked. I want to say it's inside the top 80. Christian Scott, 76th. So I have him behind his teammate Luis Severino, head of Jordan Montgomery and John Gray and Kyle Gibson. So, you know, rosterable in most leagues.
Okay, again, that was Christian Scott. He'll make his start on Wednesday. Merrill Kelly recently increased his throwing distance off flat ground to 120 feet. He is not expected back until mid to late August. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa was also a late scratch on Monday after feeling something in his left knee while stretching. He underwent an MRI, and we are awaiting results. Yimi Garcia, or, you know, someone called me out for this. I think he prefers to be called Jimmy Garcia now. And we've heard that for years now, but I've actually heard that on the Blue Jays broadcast too. So Jimmy Garcia through a bullpen session on Sunday. He's currently out with a nerve issue in his right elbow. If he could return, sounds like he would probably take over the closing duties once again, considering Jordan Romano is out. Brewers manager Pat Murphy said that using Sal Frelick at third base is a possibility following the return of Garrett Mitchell. Chris Taylor will have more of a runway to play third base for the Dodgers moving forward. We already spoke about with James Wood being promoted. Eddie Rosario was designated for assignment. And some trade rumors. The trade deadline is approaching late July. Ken Rosenthal said Tanner Scott is a popular name on the trade market, and the Marlins are virtually certain to trade him at the deadline. And according to Bob Nightingale, so maybe take this with a grain of salt, the White Sox intend to trade Garrett Crochet by the trade deadline. Conversely, rival team execs believe it's more likely that Pete Alonso will not be traded at the deadline. I've said this recently, Scott. I think if Garrett Crochet is traded to a contender, that's probably better for his value, just not being shut down or not being limited at any point. I mean, I guess they still could, but I think
it'd be kind of weird.
Less likely to happen. Less likely for him to be limited if he was traded.
Because they're going to give up a haul for him, so unless they'd have to be in such a good position for the playoffs that it was really just about acquiring him for the playoffs, So I imagine that, him being traded to a contender would make it even less likely. His innings are curtailed in a significant way. Plus, obviously, better run support. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine Garrett Crochet's value ever getting higher than it is right now, and the White Sox are not going to be contenders by the time he hits free agency, which is still a couple years away, but only a couple years away. And it makes sense. It makes sense that they would trade him, I think.
If the Marlins trade Tanner Scott, not that this matters that much, but in deeper leagues where you're desperate for saves, do you think it would be Andrew Nardi, AJ Puck as the next man up for saves?
A couple weeks ago, I did a review of every team's bullpen. I can't remember who I picked as next in line for the Marlins. It's not like they have an obvious pitcher in waiting. I imagine they'd kind of mix and match for a while until somebody really sees the job. Maybe AJ Puck is one to speculate on just because he's held the role before, and obviously they've given up on him as a starter, so that's a lot of talent to have confined to a middle relief role. But we'll see.
Some waiver wire options from Monday. On the pitching side, David Peterson turned in a quality start at the Nationals, 6 1/3, 2 runs allowed, had 2 strikeouts, and the ERA is down to 3.51. That also comes with a 1.44 whip. And Yariel Rodriguez, who pitches for the Blue Jays, turned in the first quality start of his career up against the Astros, 6 2/3 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, 13 whiffs on 83 pitches. Velocity was up in the start, and it was his first time throwing more than 4 innings in a game in his major league career. Only 10% rostered. Any interest, Scott, in David Peterson or Yariel Rodriguez?
Not sincere interest, no. There was some talk that maybe David Peterson could get optioned after this start to keep the Mets stocked with bullpen depth because they could delay filling that starting pitcher spot until the next turn came up, obviously, and fill it with Jose Budo instead, which is kind of what they did, calling up Christian Scott to take, or they will eventually call up Christian Scott to take Tyler Miguel's place. So they're kind of going with 7 starters, but just freeing up a roster spot in between turns. A 5-man rotation using 7 starters and freeing. Hopefully you're following what I'm saying here. So we'll see if that happens with David Peterson. But yeah, this is not enough to convince me he's an asset for fantasy. Yariel Rodriguez, this was a more impressive start than Peterson's, and there's reason. We've seen evidence of him having good stuff. I like that he had more of a 4-pitch mix this time, when previously he's been mostly just fastball slider. Was able to mix in more curveballs and sinkers this time. I got a good result against a pretty good lineup there in Houston, but it's still just a one-off at this point, and I need to see a lot more than that from Yariel Rodriguez, who was ranked second to last among my 2-start pitchers going into this week. So yeah, he's got a long way to go to win my trust.
We had one hitter who stood out from the waiver wire. Harrison Bader continues to play well, 2 for 4 with 2 steals and 2 runs scored. Last 7 games, he's batting .360 with 2 homers and 4 steals. Harrison Bader, 30% rostered. Scott, do you think that number needs to be higher, Harrison Bader?
How much did you say? 40%?
30%.
30%? I mean, 5 outfielder leagues, if you need stolen base help, I could see him filling that need, but I don't think you'll miss him if you don't have that need. So I think it's about right. Maybe it could be closer to 40, but doesn't need to be any higher than that.
Yeah, I think any 5 outfielder leagues, someone who's batting 270 and he's on a like 25 steal pace, that's I would say a decently useful player. And he's doing some things differently this year, hitting more line drives. The expected batting average looks a little bit better than previous years. So I'm not saying Harrison Bader is, a league winner or elite by any means, but yeah, 5 outfielder leagues, I think he's totally fine. Reminder.
I'll tell you what, if things continue to trend up for the Mets lineup as a whole, then it could become one of those lineups that elevates everybody's stock. Because, of course, you have the stars between Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. It sounds like they won't be trading. As you said a minute ago, Brandon Nimmo heating up, living up to the potential that the underlying numbers said he had all along. Mark Vientos cutting down on the strikeouts, delivering big power numbers. Francisco Alvarez had a huge game here with a double and a triple. He's batting. Am I giving away all your notes here? He's batting .462 with 3 home runs in his last 11 games, and he has a strikeout rate around 20%. JD Martinez coming around. We know what kind of potential he has. He hit a homer here on Monday. Last 16 games, .310 batting average with 5 home runs. I mean, that's a deep lineup. They're crushing it right now, and in a way that's not totally unbelievable. I mean, Vientos, Alvarez, obviously those guys were thought to have upside, and like I said, we've seen it before from Nimmo Martinez.
No, I think it's a good point, and we've seen this in previous years. Last year, not that the Mets are on this level, but with what the Braves did last year, the counting stats were just awesome. The Texas Rangers lineup last year, Jonah Heim had something like 100 RBI as a catcher. So, yeah, I mean, it could have this ripple effect that just overall boosts everyone's value in the lineup, and they might be one of those lineups. We'll see if the New York Mets can keep this up. Reminder that you should look to stream Charlie Blackmon and Brendan Rodgers whenever they are at home. I know that they were sleeper hitters for this week, off to a good start. Charlie Blackmon 2 for 5 with his 4th homer on his birthday, actually, too. Happy birthday, Charlie Blackmon. Brendan Rodgers 2 for 3 with 2 walks, a run, and an RBI. Rodgers an .861 OPS at home. Blackmon .959. So yes, whenever they are home, those two are in play. Pitching standouts, Hunter Brown, we already spoke about him. Mackenzie Gore pitched well up against that vaunted Mets lineup, 5 2/3 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, 21 whiffs on 104 pitches. 13 of those came on the fastball. And, Mackenzie Gore is kind of a tough one to figure out because there's just volatility there. He has all the talent in the world, but we do see inconsistencies at times. 2 young pitchers here, Scott, that we spoke about today. Who would you rather have rest of season, Hunter Brown or Mackenzie Gore?
I think Brown. One issue I have with Mackenzie Gore is, even though he's looked good off and on and has had big strikeout numbers off and on, 6 of his last 7 starts are less than 6 innings. It's hard to be particularly useful in fantasy, as I always say, if you can't consistently go 6 innings. He's consistently going less than 6 innings. But I do think there's upside here. It does seem like the days he performs best are when he has that fastball going, when he's getting whiffs with his fastball. And I don't know if that's mostly a matter of him locating it better. Remember, it was a few turns ago, he had probably his best start of the season, 7 inning. The one exception to him going less than 6 innings. The 7-inning effort against the Marlins, where he had 25 swinging strikes, I believe it was, mostly on the fastball. And then he did it. That was the Marlins lineup. He did something similar here against the Mets lineup that then went on to crush every reliever that the Nationals brought into the game. So it was impressive. I wish he could have gotten one more out so that the bullpen didn't immediately blow the lead for him, so that he could have gotten a quality start. But I think if you're just looking at this start for Mackenzie Gore from an evaluation standpoint, it was one to be excited about.
Let's slide over to the hitting standouts and just going to bounce around. I have a few different questions for some of these names. Alex Bregman has really picked things up, 2 for 4 with a double and a run scored since May 28th. That means his last 29 games. He's batting .325 with 5 homers, 24 runs, right around a 900 OPS. Scott, are you ready to say that Alex Bregman is just back based on the way he's performed over the past month or so?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. he hasn't been like a fantasy stud for a long time. Obviously does better in points leagues because of the plate discipline. But you're never expecting much in the way of batting average from him. And 20 to 25 homers is the expectation there. So a lot of it is just running RBI production and staying in the lineup. But I think based on what Bregman himself can control, he's been doing basically what he's supposed to do in recent weeks.
Mm-hmm. The overall numbers are still lagging behind. As you mentioned, we depend on Bregman for the counting stats. And again, those are a little bit behind. But if he has another month like this with like a 900 OPS, I think those numbers are going to be closer to what we were expecting coming into the season. Yordan Alvarez, 1 for 3 with a walk and his 17th home run. It feels like it's been a bit of a letdown season. He's still mostly been fine. .294 batting average, 17 home runs. Expected stats are still awesome for Yordan Alvarez. Jeremy Pena has really slowed down before this game, 1 for 3 with his 6th home run. And it was his first homer since May 17th. In 36 games between homers, .216 batting average, 4 steals, a .538 OPS. Still 85% rostered. Do you think that needs to be the case, Scott? Or can we start to drop Jeremy Pena in some shallower leagues?
Yeah, I dropped him in the podcast league, 12-team head-to-head points. So on the shallower end, but I dropped him a couple weeks ago. I haven't looked back. And it's, the strikeout rate is good. The strikeout rate's better than last year, which does help to boost Jeremy Pena a little bit in points leagues, but power production just really isn't there. You mentioned the home run drought he was in. His actual slug is 385. His expected slug is 383. So he's basically performing exactly as he should, according to StatCast, which is not an encouraging sign for him picking things up.
Again, that was Jeremy Pena. We mentioned JD Martinez. He popped another home run, his 10th of the season. He has an .853 OPS. His 17.6% barrel rate for JD Martinez ranks in the 98th percentile this season, finally up to 80% rostered. I think that number needs to continue climbing. William
He was the top sleeper hitter for this week, and I suspect he won't be eligible as a sleeper hitter again the rest of the season.
He should not be. I mean, he should be in your lineups, but yes, he just shouldn't be under the threshold to be added anymore. William Contreras had a big game in Coors Field, 3 for 5 with a double and his 10th homer. His previous 30 games before this, he was batting .222 with a .530 OPS, lots of ground balls. So the numbers have come down overall. Counting stats are still ridiculous for William Contreras. Christian Yelich, he continues to hit 2 for 5 with a triple, his 19 steal, 2 runs scored. Overall, he's batting .323 with an .892 OPS. He entered Monday's action as the 9th best outfielder in Roto, averaging 3.7 fantasy points per game. That was 6th best among outfielders in that format. Scott, have you given a thought to moving Yelich ahead of Julio Rodriguez or Corbin Carroll in the rankings?
Well, it'd be easier to justify with Corbin Carroll. I don't really know what to do with Corbin Carroll in my rankings because I don't really know what to even think about Corbin Carroll. And I'm just hoping if I'm investing in Corbin Carroll, obviously he was my first round pick in virtually any league I might have him. And there's nothing to do but hope that he turns things around. There's really nothing to do. And so to sell him short, I don't know. Would it be so wild to trade him for Christian Yelich at this point if somebody was willing to go for that? I guess not, but I've just kind of kept Corbin Carroll behind all the obvious studs in the outfield, just kind of forming the dividing line between them and the next class of outfielders, which is led off by Christian Yelich. So it's not a huge gap. Yeah, maybe I could be persuaded to do that, but just not sure what to do with Corbin Carroll. As for Julio Rodriguez, man, he's gotten that strikeout rate back to normal. He's still hitting the ball as hard as normal. Chris Towers actually had an interesting tweet earlier today. I guess Julio Rodriguez, the last home run, I don't know when it was, sometime over the weekend, I guess, was his home run hit the most toward left field, like toward the left field foul line, the furthest left of his home runs, the most pulled of his home runs. And it was basically straightaway left, kind of a little toward left center.
Mm-hmm.
So he clearly hasn't been pulling the ball. He's clearly been wasting some of that hard contact, which makes sense. But I think that's something that we're going to see change. And when it does, the return to form could be extreme. And obviously, the way the ball is carrying now should help for all the balls that aren't hit to left field for Julio Rodriguez. So I'm expecting huge things for him still rest of season. In fact, I was just putting together popular column I do this time of year, redrafting the first 2 rounds for the rest of the season. I still got Julio Rodriguez in round 2 if I'm redrafting. Okay. And I did not consider putting Christian Yelich in there.
Fair enough. Yeah, we do have some mailbag questions later on. One of them about Julio Rodriguez, and I noticed that pull rate is way, way down the season as well. I think that's part of the reason we've seen this power outage from Julio. As we saw last year, I mean, he had a pretty massive July, August, September. So he is someone that can get hot and carry your fantasy team. We've seen that before. Hopefully that will be the case again here in the second half with Julio Rodriguez. Let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll run through some of the June leaders. We'll talk about that right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Welcome back in. Let's take a look at the June leaders, and we'll go by the 5x5 categories, starting with the hitters and batting average. No surprise, we mentioned what Aaron Judge did. A .409 batting average for the month. Second in that category was Carlos Correa at .388, who also had a pretty massive June. Home runs, we had 3 players in double digits for the month. Anthony Santander had 13. Shohei Ohtani had 12. Aaron Judge had 11. Runs scored, Gunnar Henderson, 31 runs in 30 days in the month, continuing on his breakout season. I'll be very interested to see where you put Gunnar Henderson in those top 2 rounds, Scott. RBI leader.
High. Very high.
As he should be. Aaron Judge, 37 RBI for the month, again, in a month that only has 30 days. And the steals leaders, there were 3 in double digits. David Hamilton with 12, Christian Yelich with 10, Pete Crow Armstrong also with 10. I've mentioned this before. I don't know if Pete Crow Armstrong can hit, but he can run. That guy is really, really fast. Anything that stood out here, Scott, from the hitting June leaders?
I mean, the most surprising was that Pete Crow Armstrong was one of just 3 with double-digit steals for the month. And let me see exactly. Yeah, he's been playing an awful lot. So I guess it stands to reason. Has not been getting on base much. Been striking out at a very high rate. So I'm not sure it's worth pursuing those steals for Pete Crow Armstrong. But you're right. It's if you want to say something positive about him, it's good that he's taking advantage of the few times he does get on base. Let's see. Anything else to comment on here? We've talked about Anthony Santander rising into my top 24 outfielders. Carlos Correa, we've talked about how good he's looked lately. It's really hard to arrange shortstop right now. That is clearly the deepest position in fantasy, I would say. You talked about dropping Jeremy Pena. I talked about dropping him in the podcast league, and part of the reason I dropped him is because I can't start 3 shortstops in a head-to-head league. There are just too many good ones. I already have Anthony Volpe and Trey Turner on my roster, so couldn't deal with Jeremy Pena. And yeah, Carlos Correa. You could certainly make an argument for him being top 12 rest of the season, but I probably have him more like 16th just because that's how deep shortstop is. Same thing with another player who had an awesome June, Jackson Merrill. I'd like to get him higher in my shortstop rankings than I currently have him. I have him ranked at shortstop not that differently than I have him ranked in the outfield, which goes to show how disparate those two positions are.
Yeah. I noticed that you moved Jackson Merrill up to 17th in your shortstop rankings. I have him at 21, which feels low. I probably got to move him up a little bit. But yeah, awesome month for Jackson Merrill. We're finally starting to see some of that power, which we didn't know if he was going to tap into that this early in his career, but obviously had a pretty awesome June there for Jackson Merrill. The pitching leaders in June in the wins category, there were 9 different pitchers who had exactly 4 wins in the month. Corbin Burns, Jake Irvin, Tobias Myers, Grayson Rodriguez, Hunter Brown, Nick Lodolo, Gavin Stone, Andrew Abbott, and Kevin Ginkel, a reliever on the list.
All right.
ERA leader was Hunter Brown with a 1.16 ERA in June, who picked up right where he left off here on July 1st. The whip leader, Logan Gilbert, a 0.62 whip. That is insane for an entire month. Wow. Good for him. Strikeouts, Garrett Crochet, no surprise there, 56 strikeouts for the month. And the saves leader, another no surprise, but Ryan Helsley, who is up to 30 saves on the season. He had 12 in the month of June. Anything here on the pitching side?
Not a lot of surprises. Good for Nick Lodolo, even though he spent the last week on the IL, to be one of those pitchers with 4 wins. Tobias Myers, we talked about him yesterday. We don't expect him to keep that going. Let's see. Andrew Abbott. Yeah, that's a good time to sell high on him. I think he's going to get crushed as the ball starts carrying better here in the summer months.
Wait, Andrew Abbott, Scott?
You can't keep getting away with it.
There you go. You got to play the full clip.
You can't keep getting away with it.
There you go. He won't. Isn't that what Hank says?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what more there is to add.
The only thing I wanted to remind people of is Logan Gilbert has really upped his slider usage in recent starts, and that is kind of what has helped him take this next step. And we've seen that with a few Mariners pitchers, George Kirby using his slider more, and same thing with Logan Gilbert. It's kind of helped not turn both of their seasons around, because Gilbert has been fine all throughout. Kirby had a more of a rough stretch, but yeah, really upping that slider usage, and it has helped both guys with George Kirby and Logan Gilbert.
I've now moved Logan Gilbert to the top of my Mariners pitching rankings.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah. It wouldn't take much for George Kirby or Luis Castillo to leap past him, but for now, Logan Gilbert is the highest.
Yeah. Right now, I have 8, 9, and 10 in my pitcher ranks. Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo. How about that? Castillo, third of the trio. Bit of a rough stretch for him, but obviously those other two are performing quite well right now. All right, Scott, are you ready to play Name That Player?
I love playing games, Frank. Let's do it.
Well, one thing I kind of stress myself out about, I know you're very big into games, as you just said.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Kind of built a whole career around it,
I just don't know if I did a good enough job. So I was just in my own head, is Scott going to like this game? I don't know if he's going to like this game. Like, whatever. But the way that this is going to work is that I'm just going to give out a bunch of clues, and you can blurt out the answer. Name that player all throughout.
I think we played this before, and it didn't go great. But we'll
Maybe that's
see.
what I had in the back of my mind. I guess the only way you could lose, Scott, is if you get all the clues and you don't name that player.
Yeah.
You lose.
Yeah.
I should have loaded up some game show music or something here. Just bad job by me.
I seem to remember you had a weird clue about Gavin Lux that didn't make any sense. That's what I remember.
I don't think I have anything too clever for these, but I guess we'll find out. All right. So first up, player A. Preseason ADP was 380.3. Wow. Deep sleeper. I am currently ranked as the 18th overall player in Roto/categories. Anything coming to mind?
Yes, I have a thought. Bryce Terang.
You are correct.
Yeah.
He's wearing
the Brewers shirt today.
There you go. The other clues, I've improved my batting average from 218 last year to, I think he's up to 288. I didn't actually write that in, but that was the last I saw on Monday. I've currently, nope, that's the next player. My 28 steals are second most in baseball, and I'm a middle infielder in the National League Central. So that is Bryce Terang. I just feel like he's flown under the radar. And I was going to build this as like 4 underrated players. Bryce Terang has been so good, and we haven't talked about him. So here's our chance to talk about Bryce Terang.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. We talked about him a lot in April.
Right.
But April was a long time ago at this point. And, he did, looking at the batted ball profile here, there are 2 things that really stand out for me. Because, you could fixate on the stolen bases. We knew he was fast. We knew he could steal bases. He had to get on base more is the main thing for Bryce Terang. Ground ball rate up significantly, which is what you want from a speedy guy who doesn't have a lot of raw power. You want him to put the ball on the ground more and just find his way on base that way. So it went from 42% last year to 52% this year. That's a big increase. Also, pull rate down. He's been hitting the ball the other way more, which again, you want that from a non-power hitter because spreading the ball to all fields yields more hits. And so I think it's just been a solid, ideal, optimal change in approach here for Bryce Terang. That's allowed his batting average to climb 70 points and help him get on base enough to make good on that speed. He is hitting the ball a little harder on average, striking out a little less, just made enough little improvements across the board to have this breakout season. And while it's an atypical profile for the modern game, it's not like he's totally punchless. He does have 6 homers, so he's on pace for double digits. And I'm pretty much buying into it. I don't know that he won't drop off at all, but I don't think he'll drop off a ton.
I know you made this comp early in the season, and it kind of feels like it's just playing out that way. You said this year's Nico Horner. That's kind of what it feels like, and that's what Bryce Terang has done for the most part. One other thing I'll add is he doesn't play, or at least early on, he wasn't playing against every lefty. He's been okay against lefties this year, 264 batting average. So the OPS not as good against righties. But yeah, if he can just hit 260 against lefties, I think that'll be enough to keep him in the lineup as an everyday player. Again, that is Bryce Terang. Let's move on to the next player. Scott, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Preseason ADP was 230.4.
Not as late, but
as late. No, I'm currently ranked as the 64th overall player in Roto.
Okay, that's not very helpful.
Yeah. I'm currently posting career highs in batting average, 270, and OPS 811. I might have just made that up. 269 and 805.
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah.
Close enough. So he played today.
That was my next clue.
That might be the biggest hint of all.
I played on Monday night. I am on pace for a career high 27 homers.
No, he wasn't drafted that late.
This last clue is going to basically give it away. So.
Okay, so hang on. Let me think for a second. The fact there were only 3 games today. He was drafted about 240th. So Jesse Winker was drafted way later than that.
Way later. I don't know that this is a player that we have mentioned a single time this year.
A single time this year. Wow. Ah, man. Is it? I don't know. In the interest of keeping the show going,
I'm gonna give you the final clue, and if you don't get it in one try, then you lose. My home games are played in the Mile High City.
Okay, so it's a Rockies hitter.
That narrows it down.
Career high 27 homers for a Rockies hitter. I mean, is it Brent Doyle?
It is not Brenton Doyle. I stumped Scott White. Stumped the Scott. Brian McMahon is the name.
Oh, yeah.
Before
Okay.
there. Yeah. Just someone we haven't talked about. He just kind of goes about his business. He's chugging along.
I mean, the clue we hadn't talked about him all year. We just talked about Doyle today.
Yeah, but Ryan McMahon, I mean, the StatCast numbers look pretty good. The expected numbers are there. He's got 14 homers through 81 games. Last year, he hit 23 and 152, and counting stats are on pace for career highs as well. He's just kind of doing it. He's in a season where a lot of hitters are not doing it. Ryan McMahon is doing it.
Yeah, I feel like his strikeout rate was a lot lower earlier in the season. I may be remembering wrong. It's kind of normalized, though. It's up over 28%. Not good. But playing half his games at Coors Field can make up for that. There's an awful lot of red on his StatCast page. It is his best average exit velocity, his best barrel rate, best a lot of things, hard hit rate by a considerable margin. So he's just making more impactful contact on average. And I would still expect that to normalize to some degree, his batting average to drop closer to the 240 level we're used to seeing. I know there have been some trade rumors surrounding him. Yankees fans really want them to acquire Ryan McMahon. Not sure it'll happen.
Is that true?
I saw some buzz, some podcast segments.
Okay. Yeah, put a lefty in Yankee Stadium, but obviously it's not Coors.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still prefer Coors Field for Ryan McMahon, but it wouldn't be the worst place for him to go if he were to leave. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the way you put it is pretty much spot on. He's actually been producing, so it makes him feel more valuable than he ever has before.
Ryan McMahon, 96th percentile average exit velocity. That is massive. 93.5 miles per hour. So shout out to him. He's had a great season. We are up to our third player. Scott, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. My preseason ADP was 295.8. I am currently ranked as the 47th overall player in Roto. So a big breakout season.
Big climb.
Yep.
Big climber, this guy.
Entering the season, I had 18 steals in 448 career games. This year, I have 21 steals in 67 games.
Oh. Read that stat again? The first half of it?
Entering this season, I had 18 steals in 448 career games.
A lot of games.
This year, I have 21 in 67 games.
21 already for this feller. I mean, there aren't that many players with 21 steals. Who has that many?
Let's keep it moving. I'm currently posting career highs in batting average 317 and OPS 810.
What the heck? This should be easy. People are probably screaming it in the chat.
Again, it's just
an
underrated player that we just don't talk about much.
317, and he's like one of the leaders in steals.
I play my home games in California.
Do you now? Do you really? All right. Thinking through the California teams.
This last clue will absolutely give it away.
One by one. Who has 21 steals on any of those darn teams? What the heck? And a high batting average like that? I don't know. I should know it by now. But
last clue, and you'll get one guess. I have 4 different positions on CBS.
Luis Rengifo.
Luis Rengifo is right.
Better to get it on the last clue than never.
Yeah, breakout season for Luis Rengifo, who has all that position eligibility. Joining an Angels team this year with Ron Washington, they've been much more aggressive on the base paths and just allowing their guys to run crazy. And that is what he's done. 317 batting average, 6 homers, 36 runs scored, 21 steals, and 810 OPS. How sustainable do you think this is, Scott, with Luis Rengifo?
Well, his expected batting average is 269. However, it is a career best strikeout rate, 13.4%. Career best by a long shot. I think the batting average is going to regress a fair amount. Maybe not all the way to the expected batting average, but it's going to drop below 300 rest of season, I would say. But he's going to be running so much that I'm not sure we're going to care that much. I think of Luis Rengifo as pretty close to must start.
Mm-hmm. What's crazy is his sprint speed, 40th percentile, but sprint speed doesn't always matter. As we've seen with certain players, certain situations, steals are a very weird stat, very finicky, very dependent on motivation. If you want to run, you're just going to go out there and do it. And that is what Luis Rengifo and the Angels have done so far this season. Let's move on to our final player here, Scott. Are you ready for number 4?
Oh, I better be.
Preseason ADP, 82.4.
Okay, he's drafted a little higher.
Much higher. I'm currently the SP14 in Roto and SP12 in head-to-head points.
Okay.
I currently rank 8th in K- walk rate and 9th in expected ERA.
Okay, so he's
pretty good pitcher.
Basically doing what he's supposed to do here. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a clear enough clue yet.
My fastball velocity is up 1.7 miles per hour this season.
1.7, you say? Is it?
And I throw it a lot.
And you throw it a lot. Okay. I don't think it's who I was thinking. I was kind of thinking Sonny Gray, but I don't think that's it.
All right. This is the last clue.
Yeah.
Get it. I have 2 first names.
You do you? 2 first names. I'm bad at this game, Frank. This is not my best game. Okay, so like a pitcher basically is doing what he's supposed to do. His fastball's up a little. He has 2 first names. Man, I don't know.
You're gonna punch yourself when I tell you.
I probably am. Right in the face.
In the face.
Right in the kisser.
All right.
I don't know.
Guess for me? Or are you throwing in the towel?
I mean, I can't even come up with a pitcher who has 2 first names. So, Joe Ryan.
Joe Ryan is correct. You got it. There you go. The last gasp effort.
Almost choked.
For Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, a 3.21 ERA, a .96 whip this year. Mentioned he's top 10 in both K- walk rate and expected ERA. I've just gradually, every time I update my rankings, I say, I'm going to move Joe Ryan up a few more spots. I have him up to SP14, Scott. And largely due to, my rankings are heavily weighted on, I look at K- walk rate, I look at expected ERA, and Joe Ryan is really good in both of those categories. Maybe he just regresses like he did last season, but given the velocity being up and a better feel for those secondary pitches, I'm kind of buying Joe Ryan as just like a top 15 starter rest of season.
So my experience with him is different. I moved him way up early on when the velocity was up and when he had a different secondary profile. And I just kind of kept him there. He's 23rd for me. He kind of forms the line of demarcation between the ace level starting pitchers and the ones who are just a little lower than that. And I'm still a little wary of him having a midseason blow up, as much of a fly ball pitcher as he is. But obviously my claims this preseason that he was the most obvious bust that's been a bust. My bust pick has been a bust.
You and I both, Scott.
Yeah. is a really hard one to figure out, and keeps changing things every year. But the strikeouts are pretty much always there, and he's doing it again.
Yep. So 4 underrated players. Again, that was name that player: Bryce Terang, Ryan McMahon, Luis Rengifo, and Joe Ryan. Let's wrap up. I've got a few mailbag questions. We'll breeze through some of these. From Paul, grade the trade. I traded Paul Skeens and David Fry and got Austin Riley and Zach Gallen.
I give that an A. Not an A.
An A for Paul. Great trade. This one from Adam Azer. No, I'm just kidding. Grade the trade. 10-team head-to-head categories league. Trade Logan Webb and Clayton Kershaw. Receive Luis Heel and Ronaldo Lopez.
Well, that's an interesting one.
That is interesting.
I think in a shallower league like that, you need to sell out for the most impactful pitcher you can, which I actually think is still Logan Webb.
I agree.
As good as Luis Heel and Reynaldo Lopez have been, good in different ways, those two. But Luis Heel's already showing some signs of fading, perhaps. And it's possible that in the second half, the most valuable of all these pitchers is Clayton Kershaw. I'm not saying you should treat him that way in a trade, because there's a lot of ways it could go wrong, obviously. But we know how good Clayton Kershaw can be when healthy. So I think, Adam, you did wrong here, buddy.
Uh-oh.
This is an Adam Azer trade. No, that actually has a different connotation. I'm gonna give it a D+.
D+. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question about Julio. We already spoke about him, though. We have 2 questions about Matt Olson. First, this one's from David. Apparently, Matt Olson changed his swing before the year, and now most of his numbers are close to career lows. His exit velocity, max exit velocity, barrel rate, launch angle, hard hit rate, walk rate, etc. Could this be a Cody Bellinger situation? Matt Olson at this point batting .242 with 12 homers, a .748 OPS. He is on pace for just 24 homers, 74 runs, and 83 RBI. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure what swing change you're referring to be perfectly honest. And obviously, I follow the Braves closer than any other team. I'll tell you, he hasn't looked that different at the plate this year. So I don't think it's as extensive as anything Cody Bellinger did. And I think the Braves have one of the best hitting coaches in terms of ordering mechanics in Kevin Seitzer, who's been there for a long time and obviously has a track record of bringing out the best in hitters. And so to whatever degree Olson's swing may be off, I trust they'll get it right before the season is over. I will tell you that for putting together my first 2 rounds for the second half, drafting for the second half, I told you I had Julio Rodriguez still in there. I did not have Matt Olson still in there.
Mm-hmm.
I did have Austin Riley still in there. I did not have Matt Olson still there.
You did have Riley in there.
I did have Riley in there.
Interesting.
But I did not have Matt Olson. The strikeout rate is the highest it's been, right? And the expected stats, unlike somebody like Austin Riley, the expected stats are suffering a bit. Having said all of that, it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Olson hit 20+ home runs the rest of the way, hit 275 or better the rest of the way. That's, to a certain degree, that's how things played out last year. Remember, he caught fire. It was a little earlier than this, but
yeah.
But if you just look at the first and second half splits, there was a big difference there for Matt Olson. And it's not going to have as good of a year as last year, but he should still hit a ton of home runs, I think, when all is said and done.
There was this article from MLB.com before the season on March 15th. MLB's reigning home run leader discusses swing tweaks and big goals and talked about how he's looking to refine and improve his swing. Spent a lot of the offseason watching Chipper Jones and Ken Griffey Jr., but so far has not looked like either of those players, Matt Olson. The other question regarding Olson was from Wes. I drafted Olson in the second round, and it looks like his current pace is roughly around 28 to 30 homers, less than 100 RBI. Do I hold and suffer through a possible down year or sell him off at the All-Star break for someone like Ellie or an ace like Zach Wheeler?
Well, not to give away the whole column, but I do have Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, and Zach Wheeler, less obviously, as players I draft in the first in a redraft in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And I don't have Olsen. So I'm not sure who would take this trade, but if you can trade Olsen for either of those two, then sure. That'd be fine. I don't think that's selling low on Olsen because those are 2 really valuable players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree completely. When I was reading that, it's maybe this person thinks they can get that trade done, but if you actually have talked to another manager and they want to do that trade, then yes, I would say it's totally fine to trade Matt Olsen for.
I mean, even if Matt Olsen bounces completely back the rest of the way, I don't think you're going to lose this trade necessarily.
Yep. Couple other things from Monday, some bullpen updates for the Astros. Josh Hader got the 9th with a 3-run lead. He gave up a solo homer, but picked up his 13th save. For the Mets, they scored 6 runs in the top of the 10th. So you're probably thinking there's no way this turns into a save situation. Wrong. Tyler J started the bottom of the 10th. He gave up 4 runs. 3 of those were earned. Reed Garrett entered with 2 outs, 2 runners on. He allowed a single, but then struck out 1 for his 4th save. Reminder that Edwin Diaz is still out with that 10-game suspension. And for the Rockies, Tyler Kinley got the top of the 10th with the Manfred man, the ghost runner, whatever you call it, on second base.
Zombie runner, I heard today.
Oh, okay. He gave up a walk and no runs, and Tyler Kinley wound up with the win. He still has an ERA over 8, and I don't think that we should chase anybody in the Rockies bullpen. To stream or not to stream on Tuesday, who did we say yesterday? I think Kyle Gibson at the Pirates, Sean Manaea at the Nationals, and
if we must.
Maybe one of Zach at the Royals, Simeon Woods Richardson versus the Tigers.
Yeah, I like a few guys more than Manaea here. So I think Kyle Gibson at Pittsburgh is the best. And then I would go Simeon Woods Richardson against the Tigers. And then I'd go Jose Soriano at Oakland. And then I'd go Zach Littell at Kansas City. And then I'd go Sean Manaea at Washington. Overall, it's not a bad day for streaming.
Mm-hmm. On Wednesday, we have the return of Christian Scott. He is at the Nationals. Mitchell Parker is opposing him, going up against the Mets. We have David Festa against the Tigers, Michael Wacha against Tampa, Davis Daniel at the A's. We have Brian Bayo at the Marlins. So, some options.
Yeah, I'd go Michael Wacha against the Rays. That's a pretty easy call. And then I think I'd prioritize Brian Bayo at the Marlins just because the matchup's so good. Don't really want to trust Mitchell Parker against the Mets as hot as they are. Christian Scott at Washington might be my 3rd choice here behind Bayo. I'd put him ahead of Bayo, except I imagine it's going to be a shorter outing, given that he was throwing shorter outings at AAA.
Let's wrap up with Team Name Tuesday, and these are from Sarah. Thought Patrol.
Okay. Kind of a stretch, but not bad.
Paw Patrol?
I think so.
That's what I thought, yeah. Where's my Bichette?
I'm not sure I get what that's referencing.
Me neither.
Okay.
Maeda Mize. My demise.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
From Ryan, Witty Endeavors.
Okay. We haven't seen Devers' name used like that, so I'll accept it.
Make it Wit Chew.
Make it with you. What's that referencing?
No idea.
I don't know that I want to know.
They want me to sing this last one to the tune of Jolene. Oh, goodness. Noel V. I don't know if I did a good job on that.
I applaud you for trying.
Thank you. You want to give it a shot, Scott? Or
Not really.
All right. These are from Tom. I believe they are all songs, so yay. Good luck on us. Buxton up your overcoat when the win is freed.
Okay. I mean, that's not the worst for having 4 names in there.
You baiter, you bets.
Okay.
Don't Bogarts that joint.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
All right. This one's from Dan. Gomez and Festa Adames. Oh my gosh.
That's a nice try. Doesn't really work.
No.
No.
I'm pretty sure the subject line for that one was Scott is going to hate this team. So there you go. These are from Mo. Royale with cheese.
I mean, you're just kind of using wit as with, which is not very creative, but all right. It's fine. It's fine, Mo.
Gallon
You don't meet many Mo's, you know?
No.
No.
I'd love to meet someone named Mo. I don't know that I have.
With an E on the end.
Yeah. Gallon of sweet tea.
Okay.
I love sweet tea. So good.
Oh, you do? New Yorker.
Big fan of sweet tea.
I'm a big fan of sweet tea too.
All right.
Some barbecue.
Yeah.
It's essential.
Let's do it. Burns Baby Burns.
Classic.
And Grandma's Crochet.
Surprised we haven't seen that more.
These are from Chris Yamamoto Crosses.
Okay.
Guerrero-fied air.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It's different.
Young Frankensteins.
Using Josh Young. Yep.
Ryle E. Coyotes. Ryle E. Coyotes, I guess.
I mean, it should just be Riley Coyotes.
Yeah, Riley Coyotes, I guess.
Yeah.
Scooble Dooby Doos.
Yep.
1 hour.
Yeah. Never mind. Go ahead.
1 hour Soto.
It's simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pasqua silly question. With the first half of Pasquantino, it looks like.
Okay.
Hyde and Seegers.
Uh-huh.
And this last one's from Jamie on Twitter. Vientos, the fresh maker.
That's a good one. That's the best one. Way to end on the strongest one there, Frank.
All right. We are going to wrap there for Scott. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.